The barbell back squat. Is it something you're doing? Is it something that's in your program? If you're someone who's purchased an online program recently, maybe training at home, first thing you might have done is gone out, bought a rig or some sort of rack, got yourself a barbell and started trying to back squat. Now, Rob can do it competently and gets a lot out of a back squat. And actually, if you can do it, it's one of the most bang for the buck sort of movements. You get a lot out of it, especially if you're trying to build muscle strength, core stability, burning calories, all of those fun things. But it's not for everybody. Why might it not be for everyone? Because it's also one of the most technical movements. If you don't get this right, there is a lot of room for error, which can cause long-term issues. So, when we're looking at doing a barbell back squat, we need to make sure we've got the fundamentals correct. Now, if you've watched some of the other videos that we've done about hinging, embracing, talking about how we're stacking our ribs above the pelvis, all the different things, core engagement, then it's definitely something to go and check out if you haven't done already. But it is very important that when we start to lift loads, especially heavy loads, that we can do it in a safe way. That way we can get the full range of motion as well. Often we see people trying to get to what they believe lower than parallel or deep squat or full range of motion, all these terms that are thrown out there, especially on the internet, but it doesn't mean that's necessarily right for you. And when we adapt to different pieces of equipment, we may need to adapt the range of movement that we're doing. For myself, you won't often see me go very low with a barbell in there, so why would you do it? Well, there are elements of my training that I get benefits from when it comes to growth and different things throughout there and loading differently, but it doesn't mean it's a movement that every single person should be doing. I do love the squat, however, and it can be performed different ways. Over here, we would start off with most people just making sure that they've got their body weight squat down correct. I'm bringing Rob over to a bench for the reason is it's quite nice to have a marker. As you can see, Rob can perform a very good body weight squat. As he gets there, he can create tension, controlling down. Yes, he's actually got that hinge and that break of the knee at the same time, keeping that trunk, okay, and as we spoke about before, getting that core engagement, embracing the midsection, engaging the lats, keeping those strong, keeping that rib pinned down to the pelvis, so it's a nice, solid, smooth movement. In which case, if he can perform that well, he doesn't have to do it against a bench, he can do it away from a bench, but then we can also look at changing the resistance, the load of it. So right now he's not got a marker and he can get a little bit deeper, and all I'd be looking for is where it sort of breaks down. If it goes too low and we get too much of a pelvis tilt there, I'd be saying no, we don't need to go that low, and as you can see, I'd go right, dropping down, control, and drive up. So you've got a nice cue, but you may not have a coach at hand, so you've got to be working with markers, a quite nice thing to do, but you can get to a range that's safe for you. Then when we start to add load, right now I've got a kettlebell. This is something that a lot of people have invested into for home gyms, and when we're going to be doing this, think about when we're doing something what we call a goblet squat, where we're holding it almost in that front rack position, about a few other things. So, a couple of other things come into play, obviously collecting it safely, like Rob's done perfectly there for me. But when we start to do this now, we've got to be thinking about the tension that we're creating. When we see people do this, they can often just almost bow down at the front. Because they've got a front load, they start to just round out, bow down. This is rounding out because they feel that the nose going lower means they're actually getting deeper in their squat. Because they've picked up a weight now that might be heavier, their form completely goes out of the window. So a couple of things to think about is when we're doing this, once again, creating that tension in the lats because we're nice strong upper back. All the same things you thought about when creating tension, creating that trunk core stability. What I like to focus on is actually squeezing it in because it gives me a nice cue in there. Feel like you're bringing the elbows in nice and tight and feel like you're pulling yourself down into the squat. So as we're doing it, I'm actually focusing on pulling myself down nice and deep, drawing it down, hold for a second, and then drive up. So as we're doing it now, focus on that pull down as if someone's pulling that kettlebell down into the center. So you're breaking your knees, your hips, keeping nice and tight, hold for a second, then drive up. So you know you've got control over the movement and the movement's not controlling you. So because we've added weight, remember, weight is a tool for resistance. It's not the goal. Just collecting heavier and heavier weights doesn't mean you're going to get better out of it. In fact, it can cause a lot of issues. But performing these very well, great tension, as you can see, he's almost looking like he's trying to split the ground apart with his feet, driving those knees out, slight angle on the toes, drawing nice and tight and driving up, really squeezing the hamstrings and the glutes, okay? Obviously the quads are a big player in this squat as well, driving through, but great core and mechanical tension all the way through. If you relax there, Rob. If we can perform those movements, then yes, we may move on to the barbell back squat. Yes, that does allow us to load it more, but it is a very different movement. Once again, we've got the load on the back. We've got to really focus on keeping this upper body strength. So by doing these movements, we start to learn the movement's better. Start to practice the movement rather than just loading up something for the sake of it. If you've got a program, okay, and it's got a barbell back squat in it, you must be able to perform these very well first before jumping under there. Once again, always hire a coach if you're unsure. It is very hard if you're somebody who's having to train at home or following something online, but these hopefully a couple of cues and tips. Go through this if you can. It doesn't have to be a kettlebell, it could be a dumbbell. Crikey, it could be anything that's at home. Create that tension, nice and secure, nice and safe. If that's the case, you can then move on to the barbell back squat. But remember, do the movements well, perform them the best you can, and do them within the range of motions you can. So that was very deep there because it was a lighter load. If you start to go to a barbell, don't expect you're going to go straight down to the same depth, okay? And certainly don't force yourself into a movement that you're not safe at.